Hello guys, my name is Erik Szczygieł and today I wanna show you how I did this pair of kobolds. So, this time, similar to the orc that I did previously, I wanted to show how I did pretty much everything in terms of designing and illustration this character, and I also wanted to focus on some more important parts of all the design, and just to tell you some things about the kobolds, because the things that I'm drawing in here are the kobolds in the world of Amfisbena RPG, and in comparison to D&D, for example, kobolds in this world are not Lizardfolks, and they are more like a mix between orc or troll with the dwarf, so they're a little bit more chunky, and they live underground with other underground stuff. So for the story, I believe they live with the dwarves, or used to live with the dwarves and with the gnomes that are called orims or something like this. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but basically they are the three top races living underground. And in this case, I wanted to portray them somehow as a little bit more massive, a little bit stronger, but visibly dumber creatures. And also I was searching for the mix between female and a male. In this case, I wanted to portray them in a group, in a pair, so there will be some sort of an interaction between them. I figured out that presenting two characters at the same time will be a little bit more interesting, and yeah, it was a little bit more challenging also because painting single character is a little bit easier than making some sort of relationship between them, like to show there's something going on with their poses. Like the interaction is a little bit harder to show, and this also forced me to use some techniques that I usually use, but in this case to use them to my advantage, like to help myself with the drawing, to help myself with the perspective and pretty much everything. And for the technique, for the drawing, I decided I will sketch everything without doing the silhouette steps, because reading the description and having pretty much a lot of information about how these creatures look like, I had a pretty good understanding or pretty good idea what I wanted or how I wanted to portray them. I just needed to find some interesting shapes and some interesting details just to make sure this is the thing that I'm looking for. Also, doing some sketches sometimes allows me to find some happy mistakes, as Babros said, so this way maybe I will have some sort of an idea that without sketching wouldn't come to my mind. And also I pretty much enjoy doing all these sketches, so it's also fun. I usually tend to make for example 10 sketches, but then make a little bit more of them just to force myself to think a little bit more, so the next time doing, for example, 15 sketches is a little bit easier. And in here you can see I imported the image to the 3D code and began making a really simple pose for the character. I started with the male, later posed the female, because I wanted to show them in some sort of a perspective. I wanted to avoid this vis-a-vis flat, no perspective drawing like it is in the sketches, so I figured out it will be the best for me to just model it, to prepare some sort of a reference for myself, and it also will help me doing a little bit more complex sketches. Also, what is great in 3D code, its rendering engine is really easy to use. I had to experiment a bit with it. I did some renderings for some 3D passes, and later I will show you how I combine them in Photoshop, so this way I will have a really nice reference for the light setup for the whole project. So it took me around 10 or 15 minutes to do all of this, and it was really helpful in terms of painting later. Of course, I could just make a photo of myself, just place some lamps and anything around me and took a photo of myself, but this way I found it was way more convenient and just more fun to do. So in this case, also you can see I took the silhouette and started modifying the 3D model a little bit to make it fit the character that I was drawing a little bit better, to portray its proportions a little bit better, since it's easier for me to sometimes distort a 2D image instead of distorting a 3D image. Since I'm not too good in 3D modeling, Maybe one day I will be a little bit better at it, but at the moment I just use it to the bare minimum that I need to produce a 2D image. And also, as you can see, it helps me a lot with the perspective and with all the foreshortening and everything. And the great part is I don't have to focus on proportions or anything while doing the proper concept, the concept of a character. I can pretty much trace it, so it's way easier for me to think about the actual details and not worry about the perspective or something, because I might come up with some cool idea about how something should look like, but then I will draw it improperly, and this way basically the whole drawing will go to trash, or I will have to spend some hours refining it and checking for mistakes and everything. So this way I just developed the process that pretty much allows me to remove any kind of error that I can encounter without it. And also this way, if I do some tracing and if I model something in 3D, it helps me to understand properly how this thing works in perspective, how pretty much the geometry works in the 3D space, and also it makes it easier for me to draw everything later. Like if I see the 3D model, if I understand how the light touches it and how pretty much it goes around the form, it's just easy or easier to make a proper drawing. And in this case I was just experimenting with 3 poses. I did a drawing of her face that I completely loved, and I decided I want to keep her looking at the viewer. I thought if she was facing the guy, because the character on the right is the girl and the character on the left in this moment is a guy, it will look a little bit more natural, but I loved her face so much I decided I don't care if it will look a little bit worse if she is looking at the viewer, but I just want her to look at me. So because it was funny, the face was kinda funny for me. And in here also you can see I did a drawing, just a traditional one. As before, I don't have unfortunately the setup to record how I draw things in 2D on paper with pencils. But it was nothing special. I just took a free format paper, some random cheap ass pencil, mechanical pencil, and just drew it. And after drawing the thing, I scanned it, imported it into the Photoshop, and just painted all over it. So this way I will have my values correct. And I usually prefer to start with values and then add some colors to experiment, to have like a better understanding what I'm painting and how I'm painting it. Also, it's a little easier for me to add some basic colors and to check to search for variations. So in this case you can see I was just experimenting with the skin tone, with the cloth tone. I thought more about some bluish light, and it ended up being a blue light, but without the drawing, without all the sliders, I think the process will be a little bit more tedious. It will take me a way more time to decide what kind of colors I want. And also in here I separated the things that are overlapping, so this way I will be able to paint the things that are behind and later paint things that are overlapping everything, so it will be a little bit easier to keep every edge clean and basically to increase the feeling of the dimension between the character and the object. And for the face, I was going for something a little bit more primitive. One of the things that was important for the design was the kobold to have a little big egg-shaped like head and a huge forehead pretty much, and a little bit more massive jaw, and also to have tiny black eyes because they live underground a lot. Pretty much majority of their life they spent underground, so this way they have a really poor eyesight, and because of the poor eyesight they prefer walking underground with this blue thing that will shine. It basically will illuminate everything and make seeing for them a little bit easier. Also, the description of the character said they have a really good hearing and a really good smell, so this way they can navigate without any problems underground. So while designing all this stuff, I also thought about how they are living underground and what they may need to make it a little bit easier, and also it dictated the things that they are wearing. So in this case, for example, the staff she is holding has these stripes going from the top, and I thought it will be cool since they are miners, like all the kobolds are really good miners and are good in processing stones. I thought it will be fun if she will have some sort of a stick with stripes, so this way if they make some new tunnel or open some air pocket, they will be able to stick the stuff inside and see if the air is moving or if anything in there is toxic, and if something will be toxic, maybe the stripes will just melt or do something. Maybe they were somehow imbued with magic and they will react to some toxins. So this way they won't have to risk their lives. They can just pretty much just use the stuff. And exactly the same idea I had for this gem thing. Since they have poor eyesight, I thought like going underground without any type of light will be a little bit senseless. Just giving them a torch will be like a really typical solution. So I thought maybe since they love gemstones and everything, they love precious stones, I think maybe they should use just some sort of a gem that they saturate with magic, and this way this thing glows and it produces a certain wavelength of light or something that helps them see properly. And it also could illuminate some creatures that are living underground to make them fluorescent, like to make them glow pretty much. So this way maybe it will make easier for the kobolds to search for food or something. And later I also added the stones on the sticks on their backs, and with the idea that if they see something or they will finish digging somewhere or just basically will discover something, they will place the rod with a glowing stick, and this way they will mark this spot as checked or looted or pretty much anything. And also I had some idea for their clothing, because they are mainly using some cheap materials and cheap leather. I thought if they are living underground, really deep underground, probably a lot of creatures in there don't have really dark skin, because there's no reason for them to have a dark skin. Most of them will be pretty much pale, so I thought maybe the leathers and maybe the materials also should be pale, so this way it will make a little bit more sense and will be a little bit more unique for the characters, like in overall. So the design decisions are not led by me thinking that it looks cool. I also try to give it some purpose, so this way the whole design makes a little bit more sense for me, and also it's a little bit more fun for me just to design, so I don't have to just go with the cool factor. I try to add a cool factor to the practical use of all of these things. And in this case the process for the painting was pretty much exactly the same. If I have the values, pretty much then it's just adding more details and refining stuff and refining everything, so it was not too complicated in terms of how I did it. In overall I think it took me around 8 hours to do these two characters with all the modeling and sketching and everything, so it was like okay in terms of time. I think maybe I will be able to push them a little bit quicker, but I think I would have to start then from start to finish in digital, because I wouldn't have to like I will be able to just create some sort of a silhouette and light it properly and then add a lot of details. But the downside of doing everything digitally is not having this nice texture from the drawing that I really like, and I like forcefully leave it somewhere to add this nice traditional look to it, since I really enjoy just painting over the drawings. Also I like drawing, so I felt drawing it first allows me to a little bit better understand what I'm drawing, and also to slow down a little bit. So while drawing I also do a lot of thinking, where I just try to come up with all the cool stuff, or in my opinion all the cool stuff that is happening on the characters. And what is also cool about these creatures, like I think what will be cool about these creatures, maybe no, but I think it will be cool. Yeah, the cool thing will be if I will illustrate all the gnomes and the dwarves and everything, and maybe in the future I will make some sort of an illustration when all the three races interact with each other, so it also will be fun in terms of illustrating and designing everything. And the key part to this illustration will pretty much be the brief that will describe all the creatures, because if I have the precise brief in this case, so where all the type of clothing they have or how they pretty much look, it will be pretty much impossible for me to make an illustration for this certain world or this exact place with exact characters inside of it. And doing all the illustrations, as I said before, with all the three races could be really interesting, because then I would really be able to show how they like interact with each other, how like living, for example, with dwarves help them in terms of creating some tools or anything. There are like a lot of possibilities to make a really complex scene if I will have all the three designs that I will need. So I guess in the future I maybe will also record the process for the more complex illustration, but at the moment I probably will do a way lot more of this type of creatures. Also in here you can see I took a photo of my hand, because I had some struggles with how the hands should look like and how the bicep area should look and how he will hold all of these things. So once again, as I said in other videos, if it's not that hard to take a photo of yourself, and if you can, and if you struggle with drawing something, just take a photo, pause yourself. If you have a sketch, you can pretty much just use the front camera to see what are you doing, set some sort of a timer, and just make some photos. And in this case I used, it gives a lot of, like, it really helps. So I guess without the reference I will be able to draw these hands and they will look okay or properly or something, but I don't think it will, but I think it will take me like 10 times longer or something like this, because the photos and the videos have this advantage that their advantage is you can see a lot of really subtle things, like all the shadows, how sometimes the finger will just be placed in the space, or how some sort of a vein will pop up while squeezing something, and normally you might not think about all of this stuff. So if you can, just search for the references or just make them by yourself, prepare your own photos, your own 3D model, so this way it will greatly help with your paintings. Also, in terms of 3D, for me it's a little bit easier to think about the stuff that I paint as a 3D object instead of 2D drawing or 2D painting, because this way I can understand the relation between things a little bit better, like I can understand the light setup better, and using the 3D helps me a lot with visualizing all of these things. And if I will, for example, see for the 15th time how shadows look like in the certain light setup and how it changes, I will be able to reproduce it later with some understanding. So it won't be just guessing, I will understand what I am doing. This is why I think 3D is great in terms of learning how to draw. I don't say that everything that I painted is without any fault and that everything is perfect. Like, I know there are still a lot of mistakes that I am still just unable to see at the moment at my level, but using 3D just gives me the overall idea. So I know where to go with it, I know how to develop everything, so yeah. And the next time I will try to do something a little bit more complex, a little bit harder. And here you can also see the necklace, the lamp that he's wearing on his neck with the big gem or gem, I have no idea how to pronounce it properly, I guess it's gem, that is glowing inside of it. So the main idea was, like I previously said about the stones, I think, is that he uses this lamp to illuminate everything that's in front of him, to allow him to see where he is digging or where he is going, without holding any type of torch in his hand, because I thought if he has some poor eyesight and he pretty much doesn't rely on his eyes so much because it's dark in here and he does way better by hearing and smelling everything, maybe there is some sort of a light or a wavelength for him that will allow him to see properly, to be able to use all senses while traveling in the dungeons, in the undergrounds, in the tunnels. So maybe some sort of a kobold shaman or someone is just saturating the stones, the gems they find with magic, and it allows them to see properly in the darkness. Also, this thing that he is wearing on his neck has this small like cover, so if needed he can close it quickly without any problems, so he won't illuminate any type of thing that does not want to be illuminated, or if he just wants to hide in the darkness, so this way he will be able to turn it off without actually destroying the stone. So it's a cool small thing in terms of design, I think. And also it's one of the things that I came up with while just sketching and while just drawing the concepts. So sometimes you might stumble on a problem in terms of design, and if you don't have an idea how to like resolve the problem visually, because it might be hard to come up with the idea like how it will look like, just maybe try to go back to writing about the design, because sometimes it's better, in my opinion, to design something by words, so this way you don't have to focus on the visual aspect of it, but you can focus on the idea itself. So I think if you can describe something in a cool manner, like if you can use 2 or 3 sentences to describe something and you will think it is cool, then you can go and design it visually so it sounds cool and it looks cool. Because sometimes you might just do a sketch, do some sort of a sword, for example, on the character, and you will say that, for example, nah, the sword of this guy just sucks, it does not look good, it's not a good idea. Maybe it is a good idea, but you just draw or painted a sword that just sucks and that just don't look good. It does not mean the sword does not fit to this character. So for example, if you will start designing something, maybe try at first describing the thing. So maybe you have some sort of a badass knight that is using some sort of a great axe or something like this, and then if you know that you have to design an axe, just properly put hours into designing this axe, and this way you will not get discouraged by like one faulty sketch. Because sometimes, if I know this from the experience, sometimes if you just do some sketches and the sketches does not look great and you are searching for the ideas, you might just simply get really discouraged for future explorations. So if you draw, for example, if you have a bad day and you draw a shitty sword, you will think, okay, the sword does not fit. If you draw a shitty axe, then okay, the axe does not fit. If you draw a shitty bow and a shitty something as a weapon, shitty club or whatever, it turns out every single weapon that you are trying to add this guy just sucks and just does not fit the whole concept. And it's not because it does not feel, it's just maybe because today you are just unable to draw something cool. And it happens a lot especially when you are just beginning. In terms of drawing, I don't think it happens as much for the professionals or the really top level designers. They can like skip these problems because they will always be able to draw something that looks okay or just looks good. But if you are just starting and you are struggling with the design itself, with the drawing, just try describing it. I will repeat it many times, I guess, but I found by myself it's pretty cool way to design. And sometimes even if you are traveling or just just drawing to the work and you don't have a sketchbook on yourself, but you have a phone or some sort of a small notepad, and you don't want or don't like drawing in public, maybe just try writing some cool ideas. So this way, if you go back home and sit next to the desk and you would like to draw something, you will have the group of things that you can draw, because writing is also one of the tools that you can use as a designer. Also, this is also the reason why on a presenting boards I like to explain things also by text, not only visually, because there are just some things that you cannot show without the text. I know there is like this idea that everything should be shown visually, and of course you can do a lot of things visually, but sometimes it will be just easier to say, and this closes and this opens and this is glowing when something happens. You don't need to like paint the new character while escaping something with glowing redstone, for example. You can just say it. It will be understandable and it will move imagination. Of course it will look cool if you will draw it, but it will also take a lot of your time. If you have the time, just do it for the sake of practice. But if you want to produce some cool concepts but want to make more concepts instead of polishing only one, just write it down. It will be fine. And it's also kinda funny thing to do, especially if you like a visual type of guy. Just try to describe something in an interesting manner. This way you can also work on a skill that is all very often like forgotten in a designers, just to describe their project. If you are able to describe your project in an interesting manner, it's just okay. It's just a nice skill to have. And I do it by myself, and I also find a lot of fun and a lot of pleasure in describing the things that I want to draw or to illustrate, because for example with this guy I had a brief like with all the informations how, or more or less how they look like what type of features their faces should have or something like this. But with all the designed small stuff, with all the designs that for me are giving all this artwork a really nice and unique flavor, I had to come up by myself. And I did this not only by sketching but also by thinking what will sound cool in terms of description. And from the technical aspect, in here I just change the background to the light one, because I will present this thing mostly on a white background, and in the book it will also be presented on a pretty light page, I guess. So I just switched the background, and now I'm doing a small cleanup for the silhouette to make it a little bit nicer, to make it a little bit cleaner. And I guess that's all, to be honest. There is not much more things that I can say. I will just play now with some textures, with some minor details, doing small adjustments and everything. You can also see me flipping a screen a lot of time from left to right. The main idea behind it is it kinda resets the vision for you. So if you have done any type of a mistake, you can just see it properly. It's kinda like a new image for our brain. So this way, if you have some problems with composition or perspective, after flipping the image horizontally or vertically, you will pretty much, well, almost always be able to see it quickly without any problems. So as again, if you have any type of questions or something was unclear for you in this video, just feel free to ask them. Just write in the comments or write to me on Facebook, on my Facebook page, or contact me somewhere else. And I hope you liked the video, and I hope you will subscribe and share it or something like this. It maybe help me, it will help me in the future to produce more videos. And once again, thanks for watching, and I guess that's all. It's around 1 minute left of the video, so just enjoy watching, and goodbye.